Hello everyone, thank you for listening and welcome to this latest mini-series brought to you by the National Federation of Young Farmers Clubs in association with KUHN Farm Machinery. My name's Ben Eagle and in today's episode we're going to have a look at what KUHN are doing in terms of technology innovation in the arable sector. To do this, I'm joined by Rupert Greast, who started working for KUHN in 2020 as the non-inversion and spraying sales specialist for the middle of the country, and John Holland, who has been working for the last 3 to 4 years as an area sales manager for central parts of the UK. Welcome to you both, guys. Thanks for coming on to tell us about technology innovation in arable. It is an exciting time, which is one word for everything that's going on at the moment in agriculture, and especially when it comes to soil management. KUHN sort of take an approach where whatever your approach is, there is a system at KUHN for you. Rupert, I wonder if first of all you can take us through some of the changes that have taken place over the last few years in terms of what arable farmers have been looking for.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I think one of the primary things they've been looking for is reduction of costs, and also secondary, the ability to be able to be more preserving towards the soil structure, and actually being more aware of the fact that the soil has got to be looked after. So technology is obviously a buzzword that is in the system, and obviously KUHN have been able to implement that with various different machines. So I think some of those changes really over the last few years has been to do perhaps only the bare minimum that's required to establish crops, and not to overwork land, and not to necessarily do more than is necessary and increase extra costs. So I think that's been one of the key things that's changed over the last few years. And as I say, that I think also people have become a lot more aware, farmers and growers are a lot more aware of what actually needs to be regenerated into the crop and into the soil itself. So I think that's one of the key things.
So in terms of kit, how is the sort of situation reacted to that, and what are some of the key ways that you think kit has been innovated in recent years, or tech has been used in various ways, and what if any has had a significant impact on the industry? Who wants to start with that? John?
Thank you, Ben. As Rupert rightly said, technology is really being embraced by the customers, and they're looking towards it to make it themselves more efficient, looking at their inputs, looking at their outputs. But the way sort of they're embracing it is looking at GPS and that side of it, being more mindful really of their fertilizer application costs, their spraying costs, making sure they're putting product in the right place at the right time, and not wasting, to get the best out of it. There's different ideas, such as we've had a lot of customers go to look at VistaFlow, which is a universal tram lining head, so they can do GPS tram lining. They can also do more managing their headlands better through the turning on and off of the machine, and monitoring it using the GPS side that way. And that can be utilized from a conventional system where people are ploughing and power harrowing, but also in a non-inversion, in a min-till, regenerative agriculture from direct drilling. So that technology is really transferable across different farming practices. And that's what we've been developing and working on as a company.
So let's look at cultivators specifically, John. How has KUHN worked on improving designs over time?
Really offering a larger range. So we've got something for everyone. We've brought bigger models in especially for your XL farmers, like the 12-meter up timer. But it's the design features on the machines that are making them more accessible, such as stronger built machines, so they've got greater lifespans, looking at making sure they're all road brakes, so they're homologated for going down the road, because we know customers are not necessarily farming in a ring fence, they're having to contract farm and move to different areas, so having that ability to go 40k down the road but be safe and legal is very key. That side of it, but also looking at the cost of ownership side, we've done a lot of work on, especially with our genuine metal, to ensure that we are making the best quality in parts, so they're actually getting the lifespan, so they're not got downtime, and they actually got a more manageable cost of ownership of the machine, so they can budget that into their farming systems to, you know, ensure that they're again looking at the ins and outs to make sure they're getting the best possible margin. That's across the range from ploughs to cultivators to drills, etc.
And when KUHN are actually looking at innovating the design itself, what are you actually looking for when you're trying to, in essence, create a tool that makes the perfect seedbed, if that's even a thing?
Yeah, the perfect seedbed. That's the big question, isn't it? And that's one of the things that any farmer you speak to will have a different interpretation of what the perfect seedbed is and what they're looking to achieve. And that's very key for us, that we have the wider range, that we've got something to offer someone to achieve what they want to, you know, whether that's a tine, whether it's a disc, where it's a combination of tines and discs, or even if it's a power driven machine like a power harrow or a power tiller, you know, that is something that we offer a vast range, so we can cater to those needs. But what we've tried to do is within our designs is create flexibility. You know, one of the things we've developed is our CD 3020, which is a disc cultivator, which will also go underneath a conventional combination drill. So in a dry year, a customer can use that to, you know, as his cultivator and drill system. But in a wet year, he can change it out and put his power harrow underneath, you know, so it gives him flexibility in his farming practice, so he can achieve what he desires to in that season, because we know that the different seasons, it's a changing landscape that we've got to deal with.
What about ploughs? Some might see that as being one of the oldest tools in the book, but how do you continue to ensure that the best quality in terms of design, and how are you looking to improve that?
Well, again, you know, the customer base, the marketplace, they're looking at, you know, they're looking at the same principle with plough, and it's, as you say, one of the oldest tools in the book, but what they're looking to do is do it better and more mindful. You know, so we've had a lot of requests to move to more shallower ploughing, you know, especially working with bigger tractor tires. So we've developed the TPO body to cope in those circumstances. But then we've seen a big shift to on land ploughing, where people are looking at using GPS in their ploughing to prevent overlap, also to reduce compaction, because they're working on the top rather than creating compaction in the bottom of the furrow bottom. So there's been, you know, a shift towards that, and we've developed our range of on-land ploughs. But also we have brought the smart plough to the market. So this is a fully isobus plough, which is can be controlled under section controls. So actually putting each furrow in individually to reduce double inversion on the headlands and so on. So really just keep developing, you know, a tried and tested system.
Let's turn to non-inversion tillage and talk about conservation agriculture for a bit. Specifically want to talk about the Auroch seed drill. Rupert, what are potential clients looking for in a good no-till drill?
Well, it's a good question, Ben, and I think obviously there's variables on that, but I think the consistent answer on that really is minimal disturbance, whilst actually getting the seed still in the seed to soil contact is really obviously quite important, and it is crucial in all applications really. But a good no-till drill will create enough tilth for that seed to be able to obviously grow in normal circumstances, whilst leaving the rest of the soil and the width of that machine is not creating a whole load of tilled soil. So we're obviously trying to keep away from chitting weeds, and particularly blackgrass. That's been a real push for no-till drills to be able to do. I think also it's quite important that the no-till drill is able to operate in different field conditions and into different crops. Obviously cover crops has become a huge, you know, the area of cover crops is massive now, and is probably going to be here to stay, and could be a case of every time you're drilling into a cover crop. So I think drills have been able to have to deal with that, and it's quite important that obviously, you know, you tackle those situations with a disc rather than with a tine, because of the practicalities. Obviously it's important that a lot of people that we talk to about no-till drill understand exactly what no-till drill is. It is just literally in behind a cover crop or into establishing a cover crop in the same way with no tillage. It's a system that gets better the more you do it, it would seem. That's certainly what we've found out so far.
Okay. Can you tell us about the Auroch specifically? Why is it so well suited, I suppose, to effective conservation agriculture?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Auroch is it's a product that's actually been with the company for several years, quite a few decades actually. But it's obviously evolved, and conservation agriculture and regenerative farming has driven it really, and has brought it to the surface. And a lot of people are talking to us about the Auroch. It's well suited because we've actually had people describe it to us, users, as the Swiss Army knife. It has various tools within its capabilities of actually drilling. And, for example, just very quickly, that you've got the front crimpler. Obviously, that's perfect to go into cover crops. You're not trying to actually kill the crop. You're trying to get a very slow decomposition. You've got discs behind that, so you have that ability to be able to cut straight in. They follow directly in line with the seed coulter, but those opening discs are followed by a full width set of wheels that just tamp down any disturbance, and then obviously you're individually slotting the seed into that slot that was previously created by the disc. The Auroch, obviously a nice feature of the Auroch is its twin tank, so we have the ability to be able to put two different products in at the same time, so we can have company crops, and that's been a really popular thing, and people are very much wanting to look at that at the moment. There's the ability to add a third tank as well, so we can start putting cover crops in with the drill as well. And the cost of machinery has unfortunately gone upwards, and everyone's trying to justify and see that spread of ability to justify that machine in more than one application. It's numerous, and back to the Swiss Army knife, that's where the Auroch scores, we feel.
Yeah, I mean, clearly there is that to it. I mean, what sort of feedback or questions have you had from clients, and perhaps how is that feedback used and then fed back into the design teams when you're looking at innovation?
Well, I think it's a great question, really. I mean, a lot of the feedback has been, you tick 6 out of 7 boxes, and there's always, can we tick the 7th? And people are wanting to put on other products at the same time when they're drilling. So, as an example, that would be slug pellets, Avadex granules. So that's feedback there, the wanting of customers to be able to do that. And primarily, we've been able to facilitate that. I think the other thing has been, obviously, customers are going back to some of our earlier questions and points that John was making, is that, wider implements and higher level of technology is required. Variable rates want to come into play as well. So we've had that challenge to try and facilitate from customers. As I say, wider widths, higher speed travel. Everything's been thrown at us really, but it's such a change. It's always difficult to try and keep up with it. But I think we've successfully done that to date. Technology is always going to be moving forward, isn't it? And we've got to integrate that into the machines as much as we can.
Yeah. What about when it comes to smaller tech, John, like the KUHN app, for example? I mean, how else is KUHN looking to technology to innovate your service and what you do?
Yeah, I think, as you rightly just said, the apps, we offer a number of apps really, depending on the product, from the spread set app on the fertilizer to seeding apps and so on. We're constantly updating those because they're live. So it's great for, setting up the machine for the customer, because new products, new fertilizers are coming on the market. So that information's being updated. But also what we've been doing a lot behind the scenes is a lot of video tutorials for our technical departments within the dealership. So there's video tutorials for them to learn and how to set the machine up and so on. We've integrated part systems of iSearch, where a dealer can look at their stock, KUHN stock, and also other KUHN dealers' stock. So it may be that they don't necessarily have a part in their own stock, but a dealer 50 miles away might have one, so they can direct the customer to make it easier and get them up and running again during those harvest periods. But also a big thing that we've been pushing for a number of years now is KUHN, which is a customer-based portal where they can log in, set up their own account, all free of charge, where they can register their machines, and they can look up the parts manuals. They get the latest technical information and updates through it, and any changes coming through on the machines. And they can even look up and see how much that bit's going to cost them, so they can work out what their costs are going to be on their wearing parts for the season. And they could even go through and order it from the local dealer, so they literally can just pop down there and it's ready on the counter for them. So really making the information accessible through the technology is an important side for us.
Some blue sky thinking from you both. Where do you see things going in the future when it comes to further innovations? There's a massive question there. Who wants to start with that? John, let's go to you first.
It's a very good question, really. As we've said, the customers are embracing the technology, but obviously technology, there's different levels of cost. What the key, I think, for us is it's going to be driven a lot by legislation. What legislation is brought in, what chemicals we can use, what we can't use, and that's a big thing, whether we end up selling more plows or we end up selling more ore rocks. It's the big question mark in the industry. But the thing for us is, we know the world's got to eat. There's got to be food. There's got to be sustainability. And if we can offer kit that produces it more effectively and more cost effectively for farmers, that's the key. So I think the technology is a real key sign to make sure that we are, looking after the soil structure, but also producing the yields to be able to feed the world effectively. So that's the technology, and that is the key.
Rupert, what do you reckon?
Yeah, it's a challenging question, isn't it? But I think in relation to further innovations, something that I'm getting involved in conversations with customers quite a bit now on my side is, carbon neutral is quite a big challenging question. And I think perhaps we've got to look at ways of either machines can be capable of perhaps not calculating carbon release, but actually having an idea of what that looks like on paper for a starting point, and then maybe after that we can start to understand that this machine compared to that machine would be less carbon releasing. I think a great example of that for us is strip tillage. It's been around for decades, but it's coming in at the moment a lot. So I think innovation around that and actually farming a strip of land and then managing a strip of land across the field is quite mind-boggling. But I think it linked in with carbon release and carbon capture and that whole CO2 buzzword, for the want of a better phrase at the moment. That's something that we've got to get onto quite quickly, I think, because it's here to stay, and we've all recognised that needs looking at. So I think that needs innovation. I do think something that John touched on as well is that technology within the apps is still something we've got to embrace. Who knows? We might have a carbon capture app before we know where we are one of these days, and it could just be quite important as these machines travel across the field. We might be able to capture that data. So it's a challenge, and as you said at the beginning of this presentation, it's exciting times.
Yeah, no, really interesting. Watch this space, I suppose, everyone. And finally, John, just for our listeners, many of whom might be starting to think or thinking about a career in ag, in whatever area of ag that might be, where could they go to find out more about what you do?
Well, there's several ways they can find out more about KUHN Farm Machinery. We've got the website, www.kuhn.co.uk. We'll throw on all the major social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. So there's always these formats are always being updated daily with all the latest stuff that's going on, whether it's us in the field or new products coming through to the marketplaces with user stories and testimonials and that side, and also there's the careers path as well from the website. So, any opportunities coming up are there available.
So I did hear that you were on TikTok, actually.
Yes, it's
how times change.
Yes.
Hope you're all embracing it.
We are.
Right, well, that is all we have time for. But a massive thank you to John and Rupert for joining me on this episode. There will be a couple more of these podcasts coming out very soon. And next time, we'll be looking at technology and innovation in the livestock sector. On behalf of YFC and KUHN, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast, and please do give it a share on your socials. For now, though, it's goodbye from me and the KUHN team. This podcast was presented and produced by Ben Eagle for the National Federation of Young Farmers Clubs. It featured John Holland and Rupert Greast and was supported by KUHN Farm Machinery.